Hey, how's it going? It's Mark here, Mark's Minerals, and guess what? I'm cutting more fire agate. I bet you're really surprised. As a matter of fact, I want to cut a stone beginning to end. I want to show you all my processes from candling the stone, to choosing the stone, to windowing the stone, finishing it, contours, polishing, everything. So this edit's going to be a little bit strange. I'm going to flash back and forth a couple times. I just want to make sure that I hit on a few points. Obviously, please, safety first. If you don't have a respirator, go out and get some basic N95 masks. You can find them at Home Depot or Harbor Freight or a number of other places, Lowe's, whatever you have near you. Go get a mask. I like to use a respirator because well, it doesn't fog up my glasses. That's kind of nice. It doesn't fog up your glasses and it doesn't impede your work. These things, you're going to want a magnifying visor. This one has two separate sets of lenses, so I can magnify 1.5 times or 2.5 times, and I could also pop this little third one down if I need some up-close detailed work. So this is for when I'm up close and personal. After I've cleared off all the chalcedony, after I'm down on top of that brown agate layer and I know what I'm looking for, you're going to want this. Make sure you're not wearing jewelry or long sleeves. You don't want anything to get caught in the wheels or in the motor, something that's going to drag your hand or fingers in. It's no fun getting cut. You just don't want that. I've got an air filter on, so that kind of cuts down on some of the dust. I also recommend using a lot of water, especially when I'm doing my dustiest work. I want to use a lot of water to make sure that I'm dampening the dust so it's not flying all over the house, not only endangering my health, but the health of my pets and my loved ones. Don't want that. So, let's get started. How about that? All right. Fire agate. Let's do aguas calientes fire agate. Aguas calientes translate to hot water. Translates to hot waters. There was a lot of volcanic activity when it was being formed and created, when the agate was being layered. And because of the chemicals that were present, it affects a lot of the different layers, a lot of the different colors that you're going to see. So one of my favorite sizes to work is about the size of about $50, quarter, $50, because these things go fast. Let's see, so just dump out this one. Yeah, that's a nice one. These things are great because these things, they don't take very much time to work. You can get a better idea of what's going on. So let's go ahead, dive in, and let's see what the finished product is. I'm excited to see. We'll find out together. All right, hang on. Okie dokie, let's get to know this stone. Let's do a little zooming in. We can get a better idea of what's going on. I'm at a disadvantage now because normally I would have the stone soaking at least overnight. I recommend they soak for at least a half an hour so you can get a better idea of what you're looking at. But again, for the sake of the video, a little movie magic. There we go. We could start to see what's going on. Got an idea. You can see the color changes in the agate. Let me get that wet again. You can see how this layer is a darker brown. It goes to that milky white where the chalcedony is. You'll see these layers. You see that layer, this layer. There's more layers, and it continues up because agate is deposited over time, and it takes up the space of the space that it occupies. So it's going to spread out. What we want is we want this brown sheet as much as we can get, and so we want to start trimming some of this off. Let's give you an idea of what I'm looking at. Sorry, it's going to get a little shaky. Alright, I'm candling the stone. See what I mean by candling the stone? It's like when they would candle eggs. I'm deciding how far I can cut. I want to get as close to this without dipping into the color. So the secondary bird-shaped layer right there, that's what I'm going to cut above. I'm going to cut above, just above that pale brown. I can whack all of that off really quickly. Let's see if it follows through. Yeah, it appears to follow through. So I'm going to cut all this off and save myself a good 10 or 20 minutes. Alright, let's try this. Okie dokie. Normally I would mark that area off with a little bit of Sharpie or with a scribing pencil, aluminum pencil or brass pencil. And those are nice because they don't wash off underwater, but the Sharpie is pretty effective too. Let's see, it's going to get loud. That's part of the beginning to end process. So, again, careful, make sure you're wearing a mask, lots of water. Gentle but firm pressure. You want to maintain control over your blade and your cutting tool. You don't want the stone getting dry. You don't want the stone getting hot. Nice, slow and steady. Alright, let's back off for a couple of reasons. First of all, I've cut through the stone where I can, and the screen's getting blocked. There we go. So I'm working with a little plexiglass shield. It's 1/8 of an inch thick. It's the thing that I've been using to top my box with. It keeps rocks from flying out, from hitting me in the face. It's saved me a couple of times. So this is my favorite fire agate screwdriver. This is a dedicated screwdriver for fire agate for me now. A little quick pop. There we go. So I've cut above the color layer. I can start to see the darker layer, but I haven't tapped into it. Now I can decide if I want to maybe trim a little more. Let's candle it one more time and see where we're at. Oh yeah. So you can just see the outline of the dark. So I can cut all of this off, all of this off. I can go at a little bit of an angle and top some of this off. So let's do that now. It's really remarkable the amount of work you can do with a good diamond cutoff wheel. So let's get some of this done. Again, sorry it's loud. Wow. When I'm watching the stone, it's hard to see how quickly the that little shield gets clouded up. All right. Well, let's say just for safety's sake, I'm going to do one last cut, and I'm going to show you one other way of getting through this chalcedony with a quickness. One of my favorite methods is to create a grid. So I have to envision how deep I need to go. You can see this ridge whoop, drops down there. This looks like just a thin layer of ghost fire. This isn't the solid color, but I'm not going to cut into it yet. I'm going to eliminate this clear path right at the edge here. So I'm going to do a little gridding. make sure it didn't get too foggy. Wipe. Then come back at a 45-degree angle or so and dip in again and turn the water off. And again with my favorite fire agate screwdriver, I'm going to come in and flake out those little pieces that I loosened. See? It's a quick way to get through a lot of material without burning up most of your bits. Now I'm basically on top of that brown layer. Enough so that the rest of it I can finish with the rest of my tools. So before I proceed to that, I usually only use the diamond cutoff wheels about for one stone, maybe two stones, and that's about it. Then I move on to the next because I want to make sure they're sharp. Part I'm using is this edge here, and this is an idea. If you barely touch your finger, you're not going to hurt yourself. If you rest it on your finger, if you jam into your finger, you will cut yourself, so please be careful. You won't feel it as much because it's small little diamond cutting surface. Okie doke. One of the other things is because I don't want to waste that wheel, I'm going to use the edge of it. So, I'm going to come in like so, like an angle grinder, making sure I'm using plenty of water, and just kind of clean up some of my cuts. Start to lend a shape to the stone. Okie doke. We've basically cleaned that up. I can start to see the color underneath that I'm going for. And I think I've maximized that diamond cutoff wheel pretty much. I could probably go through and touch this side up a little more, but for the sake of diving in, I'm going to go ahead and switch wheels and we'll get back into it. Alright, so this is why I say take frequent breaks. You're going to want to reassess the stone. I want to rekindle that stone and check it. Now you can see what I can see. Most of this is garbage. Most of this can come off. There was a little ghosty layer up here, but I'm going to ignore it. I'm not even going to mess around with it because it's not continuous. It's not throughout the stone. And I want a nice bigger sheet of color layer. So all this can go. Alright. I'm going to do a little more cutting. Now that I've got my little football ready to go, get cutting. Sorry for the loudness again. Okay, through special effects, and I've traded to a bigger wheel that's still sharp. There we go. Okie dokie. Let's clear that off one more time. There we go. And it looks like we got most of that. Yeah, looks good. Where's my favorite screwdriver? Here we go. Let's flake some of this off. Turn off the water so I'm not wasting. And I'll just keep on flaking these out of there. Pardon me. Getting rid of that garbage. There we go. This is another reason I like working inside of a box. If you're just doing this out in the open, you're going to wind up with sharp little bits of quartz all over your house. And your bare feet will find them, I guarantee. So be careful. There we go. You can see it really does go fairly quickly. It just takes a degree of confidence. Okie doke. I think I'm down to where I want to be. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch out from here for my cutting wheel. Let's see. And I'll use one of these. A different type of wheel. And this one is diamond bonded. So it's a coarse 100 grit impregnated with diamond, but it's plated. It's not all the way through. So what you want to make sure with all your beds, gentle, even, steady pressure, lots of water. These will last a long time if you take care of them right. If you use a lot of pressure and bear down, you'll burn up your shaft, your motor, your hands, carpal tunnel syndrome, all sorts of terrible things. So nice, slow, steady wins the race. I guarantee it. See, it's just peeling layers away, and I don't have to bear down. And it starts to become a little bit darker as I approach those bubbles. It really starts to shape up. I'm going to continue doing this over the stone till I'm at a uniform area, and once I've uniformly cleared that off, then I'll come back with the next step. Well, you might notice that I've cleaned up my area. I rinsed everything, got rid of the big pieces of chalcedony and rock. I just don't want them contaminating my work surface. As I continue to work down, I've finished with the course, because I've started to expose the color. As soon as I can see a flash of some color, and I can see the outline of the bubbles, I'm getting rid of medium. It's time to switch to coarse, and get into a medium. I'm going to use a flame tip, because it's shaped like a flame, and this is one of my favorites, so I'm going to come down in here now and then work down toward the darker agate and expose some more of this color, but not get in too much. I want to define this line here. I've noticed that this is soft mud and clay. That's the problem with a lot of this volcanic rock. This is what's going to produce some of your best color. So it'll be tricky deciding how to flatten it and layer it later. But at least for the time being, let's bring out some more of this color. Increase our water flow. Obviously you're wearing a mask, hearing protection, eye protection, and here we go. So now I'm going to continue to peel away much more slowly now that I've exposed the color. There's still going to be those little mud pockets or pockets of volcanic rock. We're just going to slowly peel away. We don't want the tool to rest in one area for too long. We're going to burn up the stone, create unnatural shapes and valleys. We want to keep it fairly uniform. So what I'm doing is, there are bubbles in here, and I'm basically just using the tip of this to run through those valleys. It's just like tracing. You're tracing those lines, creating a little bit of depth, because that's going to allow the color to best show up. It just does. So even with just a brief, oh look, there's some blue down there. Oh, nice blue-green. Okay, so even just with some brief cleaning, you'll see that it started to come through. So gosh, normally this is where I would stop and be working with my magnifying visor with fine, continue outlining all these bubbles, and then I don't want to dip into any more of the blue or green or that purple flash. I want to save those. I want to just start to eliminate the brown to the orange layer above it. So I'm gonna stop the video for right now, and I'm gonna come back when I've cleared all this up. But for this work, I am gonna use my magnifying visor so I don't lose so much color. Okie dokie. Alright, I've gone past most of that ghosty color, and I'm dipped into more substantial bubbles of color. And so I've switched out to a fine grit or 600 grit inverted cone. These are really good for delicate work. Let's see if I can get in there. You can see there's that ghosty purpley green. The unfortunate thing is, although it's beautiful, there's no substance to that color. Whenever you cut it, it's so positional. It's almost impossible to keep a good all-over directional color. So I usually pour right past through it, because it means that the right chemicals were deposited so that the next layers you still have good color. So I just find my strokes, try to remove any curl marks or rough marks. And it does look like there's purple underneath there. So that's a good sign. Alright, really quick, I'm going to, I still have to get down in there. So I'm going to have to get down in there with my magnifying visor. So look at this. Unfortunately, it does end here. That's mud right underneath the chalcedony. So that bubble's not viable, and it's a little thicker through here, so these will be viable. We'll go ahead and continue working on this area and trying to develop that. Ignore this, and when it's all down to fine, right before I'm ready to switch over, I'll be right back. Alrighty, so I smoothed it all down with a 600 grit, so it's at a nice, relatively smooth finish. Unfortunately, it doesn't really have the color that I was hoping for. It's got a little bit, but it's just not going to be quite as amazing. As much as it pains me to say, this stone would have probably been better served on a cabbing machine, so you could have just cut down to that color and got a tiny stone out of it. But they're not all gems. Still, I'm going to make the most of it and do what I can with it and see what I can salvage. So I'm using a dataflex reel here. And that's a product by VH Technologies. They are remarkable tools. When you're working with them, you can work dry. You don't need water. As a matter of fact, you can't see like that. That's why I should have kept that out. Because if you get them wet, you have to dry the stone off completely. Otherwise, when you touch the wheel to it, it starts to melt away the wheel really rapidly, and we don't want that. So, and I'm using a foot pedal. I'm going about 1/3 speed, and as far as pressure, it's maybe an ounce of pressure. It's really minimal. If you're using more than that, you're going to wear out your tools faster. You're going to wear out your hands faster. You're going to burn through color layers faster. Just all in all, it's something you're going to want to avoid. Alright, so what we have here is something that happens to a lot of people. You start to get these little pinholes, and you think, how do I address that? One of my favorite ways is like I'm doing now with the skewer. These bamboo skewers are fantastic. You can, oh, there's a little mud pocket. Oh, shucks. Well, let's see what we have. Always stop, take a break, assess the stone, figure out what you got. Let's zoom in a little bit. There's going to be like a pale green underneath there, yellow to pale green, but right here, let's see, I think I can go past this. And this is something, if you have patience, you have some bamboo skewers, and you could even get some diamond paste in like a 280 grit or cerium oxide, and then just slowly work down in there. Believe me, it doesn't take a whole lot of pressure. It just takes persistence. And you start to get in there and clear that out. Again, water, maybe a little polish. You can do this if you don't have Nova points, or you can do this just for some of those really tight, hard to reach spots. I feel like I have more control over the stone this way. It's more similar to the old method. And see, that's starting to go right away. It's burnishing it out. So that hitch is gone from before. Might be a tiny lip left, but that goes fairly quick. I'll continue working this until it's smooth. So the next thing I have to figure out is, what am I going to do with the stone? What's the finished product? What's the finished stone going to look like? Well, it's going to be a little one. I'm thinking we'll start larger because I can always shape it differently. Yeah. So I'm going to go with a large wide cut. So before I switch to the before I finish up, this is just preliminary. This is a coarse dataflex. I just kind of cleared that up to see what I'm working with. Now I'm going to switch this out and zoom back out. There we go. Get rid of the dataflex. Come back to the diamond cutoff wheel. Again, tons of water, safety equipment, just like the beginning of the video. All right. Here we go. And that's why I love working inside my box, because if I do accidentally let go of the stone, it doesn't go flying into my face. Let's see. Alright. I've rough shaped that stone, and I'm going to come in, use the edge of this to slowly proof that shape that I want. even to give depth to the stone. Alright, so that's going to be a lot easier for me to work around, clean up the edges than holding onto a big stone. And I can glue this to a dop stick, either with wax or super glue, and work around it. So I'm going to go ahead, attach it to a dop stick, and we'll be back. So I'm going to use this course-shaped rounded cylinder just to do a little more shaping on the outside. I want it to have a nice, even, clear outside so it's easy to bezel set into jewelry. I want to make sure it's colorful. I try to maintain my angle so it's uniform, but it'll be a lot easier to get that final uniform outside once it's on a dop stick. On a dop stick, you can press it against the wheel, keeping the wheel planted, and that way you get a nice square outside. Again, for the sake of the video, I'm going much faster and coarser than I normally would so that I can demonstrate each step. I normally don't try to finish a stone in 2 hours. You don't have as much control over the stone. Alright, I think I have my coarse, rough shape, and next I'll dop it. Alright, so it's on the dop stick. I'm not going to show you how I did it. I recommend, pardon me, if you don't have a dop station with dop sticks and dop wax, just go to the hardware store, get some lengths of dowel, cut them into manageable lengths, get a little bit of super glue and super glue it on the end. You got to cut a flat surface. Works fine. This is dop wax, but I don't do it very safely. So once it's on there, you see this dataflex. I mean, it's worn down to nothing. It's just a nub. But that's the great thing about these. You can use them that way. Dry, so obviously with a mask. And I just want to make sure the outside is smooth and even all the way around. Makes it easier to set into jewelry later on. And it just gives the stone a cleaner look. Now, I don't recommend you film yourself while you're trying to cut rocks, because it's easy to blow through layers. But I'm glad to be able to show you the basics of what I'm doing. Feel free to adapt it to your needs. Oh, just in case you're wondering, some people are wondering about the polish. Here's some Diamond Pacific 260 grit. So I'd apply a little bit to that hole there, and you can see it's like in a thick grease solution, and then there's a diamond compound in there. It's nice and coarse. And I just get it, charge it onto that stick, and get in there. And again, keep moving. And if you feel a hitch, keep going back and forth until that goes away. You'll feel a point where it just disappears, and you get rid of the rough spot. So this is going to take, pardon me, this is going to take just a tiny bit. I'm going to go pause this, or I'll stop this, get this little hole filled in, taken care of, and be right back. It had occurred to me that some of you are probably using Nova points, so I'm going to show you a method of using these that some of you might not be doing. I like to use, initially I was using mineral oil, but it's doesn't quite have the adhesion that I was looking for. So this is a 60 grit wheel. This is a super coarse, nice beefy wheel. Just some standard petroleum jelly, and off camera so I'm not branding that. There we go. Alright. Tiny bit to the stone. Tiny bit here. And just make sure you moisten the tip periodically. Again, this should be done with the magnifying visor up close so that you're not blowing past anything. On this you could use a tiny bit more pressure, maybe up to 3 ounces, but you really wouldn't want to use much more pressure than that. In case you're metric, just think about 80 grams worth of pressure, and that's your higher end, as opposed to 28 to 30 for most of the work with the sintered bits. Alright, kind of that nice all over finish. Don't let your points dry out or they'll burn up really quickly. You don't want that. Alright. Pause for a second. So I switched out the bit. I've gone from the 60 to the 120 grit. And you notice that it's clean, it's clear. I've wiped the stone off. I got rid of that rock dust because as I start working on it, I don't want to keep contaminating everything as I go with rock dust. If I keep on doing that, then I'm dragging the rock dust as I go. I'll never get a good polish. I'll always have those scratches, and I don't want that. So these are super coarse. You don't have to use them for very long at all. You just want to make sure that you've got even coverage. You'll get a certain level of coverage, and you want to make sure it's continuous over the breadth of the stone before you move on to the next one. And again, I'm really rushing this one along for the sake of the video, but it gives you a better idea of what I'm going for. So all my surfaces, I'm going to make sure they're nice and uniform. And normally at this point, you'll feel a difference. If you feel a hitch or a catch, then you've got to stay with that bit until it's gone before you move on to the next one. If it's nice and smooth and the tool glides along easily, you're probably done with that tool. Alrighty. So I'm going to continue switching out. Alright, so I went over it with the Nova wheels, and I've got a smooth, even polish. So I've got a little 14,000 polish and a soft bristle brush. Charge that a little for the stone. My best advice is make sure you just go slow and steady. Watch what you're doing. Don't try to rush a stone. There's no reason to. This one, I'm just doing for the sake of the video to give you a general idea. You can put it back to back with some of the other videos and get a more comprehensive look at the individual steps. I just want to bring them all together really quick. When you're doing your polishing, very light. Maybe a half an ounce or about 15 grams. You just want to maintain control over the brush and make sure if you go vertically all over the breadth of the stone, top to bottom. When you go horizontally, do the same. Follow those patterns so you have an even, nice, consistent pattern. Go for the sides. And I'd probably do this for 10 to 15 minutes. But for the sake of the video, I will wash it off and continue and do more. But I just want to show, here we go. From start to finish, what was once the big stone is now mostly polished. It's got almost a mirror finish now. So after a little more polishing, some more of this color will pop. And this is going to be another one of the giveaway stones for once we reach 1,000 likes. So please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for all your help. And I look forward to answering any of your questions. Take care. Thanks.